Councilman Faust, do we have a quorum at this meeting?
Yes, Mayor, we do.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask Councilman Looney, if you will, to do an invocation for us.
Lord, it's hard to think of the blessings that we have today. Beautiful weather, a great city that we live in, but we all know these are very tough times. Give us the energy and the knowledge to react to these tough times and do your will throughout our days on earth. Amen.
Amen. And Councilman Kirk Rathfield, will you say our Pledge of Allegiance for us?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Council, you have in front of you our agenda, and I think all of us have time to look at this, so I would entertain a motion that we adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
And I have a second. With a motion and a second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. And the motion is carried. Under new business, with the U.S. Department of Agriculture letters of conditions for loan and grant application. Brandon, I'm going to turn this over to you for a little bit of expertise before we turn it over.
Yes, sir. Mayor and council, and for the public, we have on the phone and through the Zoom meeting representatives from the United States Department of Agriculture. It's in regards to a grant and loan application that our engineer of record, Ben Turnipseed Engineering, has put forward. We do have on this meeting, for a matter of record, our elected body, along with our city attorney, David Siphon, our engineer, Chris Poget, and director of water and wastewater, David Hall. So with that, this meeting is a requirement for USDA to present the elected body at a special called meeting, the letters of conditions as it relates to our application. So with that, I will defer to Ms. Lucas and her co-workers to take it away.
All righty, thank you so much, Brandon. I'm so excited to have this opportunity to deliver the letter of conditions to the city of Jasper for the water pollution control plan improvement. You guys have been approved for a loan in the amount of $4,748,000 and a grant in the amount of $2,977,000. Do you all have a copy of the letter of conditions in front of you?
And they should. If not, Tamika, with the sharing, I am bringing that letter up at this moment.
Okay. It's a pretty lengthy document, and I didn't want to have to read it all. It's like 37 pages, so what I will do is just highlight the most important parts of the letter. It just states here that this letter establishes conditions which must be understood and agreed to you before further consideration may be given to your application. The loan and grant will be administered on behalf of the Rural Utility Service by the state and area staff of USDA Rural Development, both of which are referred to throughout this letter as the agency. Any changes in project costs, source of funds, scope of project, or any other significant changes in the project or application must be reported to and concurred with by the agency by written amendment to this letter. If significant changes are made without obtaining such concurrence, the agency may discontinue processing of the application. All conditions set forth under Section 3 requirements prior to advertising for bids must be met within 365 days of the date of this letter. If you have not met these conditions, the agency reserves the right to discontinue the processing of your application. If you agree to meet the conditions set forth in this letter and desire further consideration be given to your application, please complete and return the following forms within 10 days. And that is the loan resolution form, which we're going to go over today, the letter of intent to meet conditions, which needs to be completed, and also the request for obligation of funds. The loan and grant will be considered approved on the date the 1940-1 request for obligation of funds is signed by the approving official. Thus, this letter in itself does not constitute loan or grant approval, nor does it ensure that funds are or will be available for the project. When funds are available, the Form 1940-1 will be provided to you for your signature. Okay? And the next section talks about the project detail. It talks about the description of the project. The proposed project will expand the treatment capacity of the plant to 1.56 mgd to meet current and future demands. The plant improvements will also address issues that have resulted in effluent flow rates exceeding the permitted plant effluent limits. In addition, this project proposes to relocate the plant discharge from Polecat Branch to Long Swamp Creek. The proposed project is more adequately described in the PER prepared by Turnip Seed Engineers dated February 2019, revised in March 2019, and revised again in April 2019. And the total project cost is $7,725,000. Okay. And in section 3, it talks about the budget, and it shows how much has been allocated for the development costs, the engineering costs, inspection, pre-development, permits, land and rights, legal services, interest, and contingencies. Okay, obligated loan funds need not to complete proposed project will be deobligated prior to start of construction. Any reduction will be applied to grant funds first. An amended letter of condition will be issued for any changes to the total project budget. And section 2 talks about repayment. Okay, you guys were able to get an interest rate of 1.375%. And you have a monthly payment of $12,868. Okay. The loan will be secured by a sewer revenue bond in the amount of $4,748,000. The bond will be fully registered as both principal and interest in the name of the United States of America, acting through the United States Department of Agriculture. This revenue bond will constitute a first lien on the sewer revenue. Okay. Item number 6 talks about electronic payment. And what we'll do, we'll send a form out for you guys to fill out, because all the payments will be made through a pad agreement, and they'll be taken out automatically. Item 7 talks about the construction completion time frame. All projects must be completed and all funds dispersed within 5 years of obligation. If funds are not dispersed within 5 years, you must submit to the agency a written request for extension of time with adequate justification of circumstances beyond your control. And we may be able to get a waiver if necessary. Okay. Item 8 talks about disbursement of agency funds. Okay. The reserves, under item 9, debt service reserve, we have an amount that you guys should have in your reserve account, and that should be 10% of the proposed loan installment.
Tamika, is there only just one reserve account is there only the debt service and the short-lived asset reserve, for those the only two?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I can barely hear you.
I'm sorry, I was trying to ask on the reserve accounts, are they only the two reserve accounts that we got to do under this grant loan?
Yes. The debt service and then the short-lived asset reserve.
It's worth noting, too, that the debt service reserve fund only needs to be funded for the first 10 years, and at that point you have a full year's repayment in reserve. So the city's requirement to fund that additionally goes down at that point. And the short-lived asset reserve fund is something that, if designed properly, David and his crew will be using that pretty often, too. It'll turn over quite a bit.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Section 3, requirements prior to advertising for bids. They're your environmental requirements, and then the engineering services, we would have to have that. Also, item number 12, contract documents, final plans, and specifications. That is also required. Okay. And Chris is familiar with those items, so they work with us quite a bit. Let's see, am I going too fast? Any questions so far?
Well, I've got some questions, and my questions may be questions that the council have, and maybe the mayor. I've just become city attorney as of January, and the mayor only took office since January. And so I think it would be helpful if we could have an overview as to the scope of the project. I hear you when you say it's with the wastewater plant, but you know, in 4 sentences, you're telling us we're spending $7 million. I think it'd be helpful to have a little background to know what we're doing and why, so that if we get asked on the street, you know, why are you guys spending $7 million on the sewer plant, we'll be able to tell our constituents why. And then I've got some other questions, but why don't we take that one first, because I thought it would help me at least, and probably others, to have that background to be able to, you know, talk to people in Jasper about this project.
Okay.
And Tamika, if you don't mind, what I'd like to do from a staff perspective is, if you would permit perhaps Mr. Pouget from Turnip Seed, who's probably a little more qualified to speak on the city's behalf of the impetus of this in terms of the need. If you're okay with that, and Mayor, I think Chris is probably positioned to do that.
Absolutely. I will also let the council know that I have not had any experience with the city of Jasper. I believe you guys have been working with Monica Jones and Jack Stanek, our program director. But I'm just filling in just a little bit until they get someone to replace Monica. So Chris is definitely more qualified to explain the purpose of the project. So I'm going to let him speak at this time.
David may have some things to add also while Chris is talking.
Yeah, feel free to chime in, David. So it's a good suggestion to do this. Typically, when we do these meetings in person, I'll start with with an easel or a slide that shows the plant side of the project scope and kind of talk through that before we jump into it to give it some context. In a nutshell, though, the purpose of the project is really twofold. It's to double the capacity, the treatment capacity available for the city of Jasper. Right now, talking in round terms, you're almost 800,000 gallons a day of capacity, and this will take you to almost 1.6 million gallons per day of treatment capacity. So you'll be able to expand the sewage system a little bit as needed, and as things develop or fill in or whatever industry comes, you'll have the capability to treat that. So I'll talk some about the structures that we're adding. Most of this expansion of the plant or upgrade of the plant was laid out, at least conceptually, 40 years ago when the first plant was built. So a lot of these are building basins that were already envisioned, and some of the piping was laid out in place and some of the site was prepared. So a second big part of the project, though, is to move the discharge point for the city's wastewater from a tributary of Polecat Creek, a little ditch that runs alongside the plant right now, over to Long Swamp Creek, just downstream of the city's drinking water intake. So a couple things that accomplishes for you. It gets you out of this tributary to Polecat Creek, which is considered a secondary trout stream, which means in your next permit, or certainly in the very near future, like so many other communities in North Georgia, you would see a temperature limitation on your discharge from the wastewater plant. So you've got to put in mechanisms, equipment to cool your treated sewage. Moving it to Long Swamp Creek is not considered a trout stream, so it removes that requirement and some of the other more stringent nutrient removal requirements you might have that would really drive up your treatment cost.
So let me ask you, do we have whatever little bit of land area we need to at the Long Swamp Creek to do the discharge pipe or whatever you need to do there?
Within the existing right-of-way and easements, we feel like you've got enough. That's one of the things as we get along in the project and we finish surveying and Cove Road's got a pretty wide right-of-way, but if it gets to the point where we feel like we don't have enough land, you and Brandon will be the first two that we notify that might need an easement or might need to acquire some land. Something that we'll submit to USDA before the design process is finished is a right-of-way map that we prepare, and you and I go over and we both sign, and the mayor signs too, and we provide that to USDA to affirm to them that everybody's done their due diligence and we're not going to start off on something we don't have the land for. It's a good question, though.
And
We've done a lot of preliminary work out there already trying to figure out exactly what's available.
our budget says $15,000 for land. You think that'll cover it?
I think that's probably more than enough. We did that just in case we have to pay for a temporary easement or something. There's a pretty good path already across there. We have done that much work when we laid this out 10 years ago, I guess, initially. But the other interesting thing that's not related to your wastewater, with your drinking water, you're oftentimes limited on how much you can take out of Long Swamp Creek for drinking water based on how much water passes and goes downstream. So you've got to maintain a certain amount of flow in Long Swamp Creek below your withdrawal. So this will kind of serve two purposes, kill two birds with one stone, if you will. It'll get you out of your temperature and your strict biological nutrient removal requirements, and it'll provide additional flow to Long Swamp Creek downstream of your withdrawal, which obviously is going to help you with your drinking water supply. So the things that we're doing if any of you are familiar with the wastewater plant site, the things that is going to happen over there on site, you've got a single aeration basin that exists. There'll be a second aeration basin added. You've currently got 2 final clarifiers. There'll be 2 more final clarifiers added, thus doubling that capacity. The existing chlorine contact chamber will be expanded for your disinfection purposes to get you the additional capacity you need there. The filters that already exist so that you can meet some of the conditions of your last permit, those will be expanded a little bit. Last time we did an expansion of the plant, we already put provisions in place, so this will be a less expensive way to do it than if we were starting from scratch. And then obviously there'll be a pump station to take all that effluent and pump it over to Long Swamp Creek. In addition, we're going to add a second sludge holding tank for the additional solids.
Pump station at the sewer plant, or is it in between the sewer plant and Long Swamp Creek?
No, it'll all be there at the sewer plant.
Okay.
We want that monitored and maintained and everything just like the other equipment. And the last thing I was going to say was some sludge dewatering containers that David uses to dewater his sludge and get ready for the landfill. And that's about all the further $8 million goes these days.
Let me ask you another dumb question. Had you already had EPD approve your design for the sewer plant, or are we still in the permitting process?
No, well, they will. They know it's coming. We've done a lot of the detailed design development reports and environmental information documents. We've got the notice of no significant impact approved by the EPD or the NONSI. The environmental planning and review documents already been approved. So that was, say conservatively, 3 years ago, the city council approved us doing some of that preliminary planning. So all that's been laid out.
And do you have like a rough of a timeline that you're looking at for EPD approval, and then I guess the public hearings we got to do, and then getting to advertisement for bid? Can
Right.
you ballpark that for us?
Well, I would say roundly, before the end of the year, you should be in position to advertise and take bids. And I'll say that with this caveat. All the folks from USDA on the line, they review the plans and specs after EPD approves them. And sometimes that goes real quick. And let's just say sometimes it doesn't go real quick. So with Brandon as my witness, the last meeting we had face-to-face with USDA was in October to get this funding lined up. And we felt like that would be any day at that point.
So we really don't have the EPD permitting yet. In my experience there, sort of like yours, that it can take them 6 months, can take them longer.
Yeah. Right now, EPD's approval of construction documents, technical specifications, and construction, that's going along pretty quick because really all they're doing is checking to make sure it complies with the original design development report. So if nothing varies from that, we're in pretty good shape.
They have seen these designs and have had input along the way of processing, correct?
Correct.
And reading the letter of conditions, it looked to me that y'all were kind of thinking that we'd have to do an interim loan of some amount to get us up to the point of bid, or am I wrong on that?
But I can address that too. Tamika may want to weigh in on it, but the way that typically works is that a community will get an interim lender, and typically it's as simple as a local bank that will lend you the full amount of the loan. So not the grant, not the whole project, but the full amount of the loan. And USDA will provide what they call a takeout letter or a guarantee on that loan that says if you meet the conditions and you follow through with the final funding, then they will reimburse your interim lender in full for these things. So, like I said, typically it's a local bank. That's it's kind of a shooting fish in a barrel from a banking perspective. Sometimes communities don't get competitive bids from local banks, and GFA is kind of a last resort interim lender too. But they'll serve, if you've ever built a house or been involved in other construction project, they serve as your construction lender. And once your loan funds are gone and USDA can close the loan, and there's a bond process that goes with that too, obviously. When they can close that loan, then the interim lender is reimbursed and the rest of the project is constructed directly from USDA funds that they pull out of your grant fund.
And I wanted to be sure I understood on the revenue bond. Are we going to be issuing revenue bond to private purchasers, or is RD going to, in effect, buy all the bonds and be the holder of the bonds? I was sort of unclear on that.
The latter of those two scenarios is how it happens.
Yeah.
That's why you get such good rate. This 1 3/8, I can tell you, I've not seen this in 30 years.
Yeah, it's a great
That's a
rate.
great rate. Excellent rate.
That's all I got right now. I'm sure I'll chime in later.
Okay. Well, thank you for your questions. Thank you, Chris. Okay. I think we were on item 13, legal services. So I do have your attorney on the call. So the city will be required to execute a legal services agreement with the attorney and bond counsel. So we would have to have that. And the agency will provide concurrence prior to the advertising of bids. Any changes to the fees or services spelled out in the original agreement must be reflected in an amendment to the agreement and have prior agency concurrence. Okay. And also there, they mentioned property rights under item 14. And we're going to have to put that
on the legal services contract. Do you want a contract between both me and the bond counsel, or can my contract cover bond counsel?
It should just be between just you and then the bond counsel.
I would contract with the bond counsel under your contract, is that right? Or with my?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct, yes.
Okay.
And we have a form that we can send you. It's actually one of our forms, and I'll make sure that you get that.
I've seen it before. It may be updated though. Okay, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Okay, and on the property rights, we would need a right-of-way map and a right-of-way easement if necessary for the project as well, and a right-of-way certificate. Okay, and we would need an opinion of counsel relative to right-of-way and the preliminary title work. So those are things that the attorney would need to complete. And any questions, please let me know. We'll be happy to assist you with those.
And how soon do you need the preliminary title work done?
Well, what we're going to do here in a little bit, we're going to ask you how long it's going to take you guys to meet the conditions of the letter of conditions. So as long as we have that within that time frame, we'll be fine. We really like to get the legal services agreement first and foremost.
Right.
We want to have that pretty soon. But as long as you get it to us within a year, and then we'll be fine. We normally like to give you a year to meet the conditions, but of course, if you can meet it sooner, then that would be great, and you can provide it to us before then. Just some policies.
We can get it done well within a year.
Okay, great, awesome. Okay. Okay, so system policies, procedures, contracts, and agreement. The facility must be operated on a sound business plan. You must adopt policies, procedures, and ordinances outlining the conditions of service and use of the proposed system. So we would need that. You provide that to us. That's one of the items we need in order to request the loan closing instructions, and also a conflict of interest policy. Prior to obligation of funds, you must certify in writing that your organization has in place an up-to-date written policy on conflict of interest. The policy will include, at a minimum, requirement of those with a potential conflict to disclose the potential conflict, a clause that prohibits interested members of the applicant's governing body from voting on any matter in which there is conflict, and a description of the specific process by which the governing body will manage identified or potential conflicts. So we would need something like that in writing from you guys as well. And then there's a sample of those conflict of interest policies, and there's a website where you can go and get that if you needed more information regarding that. Okay. And
I wonder whether the conflict of interest policy is an administrative policy or an ordinance.
It doesn't really matter. It can be a written letter, just signed and dated. They have some samples that you can pull up on the website. It doesn't have to be in any particular format. We just want to make sure that you have some type of policy in place for conflict of interest.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, contracts for other services. There's information there regarding that. Item 16, closing instructions. The agency will prepare closing instructions as soon as the requirements of the previous paragraphs are complete, as well as a draft of the security instrument. Closing instructions must be obtained prior to advertising for bids. And then it mentions interim financing, any loan exceeding $500,000. You must have interim financing, and you can go to your local bank and get that, or GFA. You can use GFA if necessary. Okay. All right, and the system users, you guys mentioned that you had at least 1,105 residential and 562 non-residential sewer customers on the system. We would have to have some type of certification that that is still the case, or if it's going to be more or less. Okay. Proposed operating budget we have here. The annual revenue that you must generate for this project, and that's $1,925,923. Okay.
Let me ask another dumb question. I assume y'all done a preliminary analysis that shows we can meet the $1.9 million figure. Do you have, Chris? Have you done that, Chris?
Yes, sir. We haven't come up with a detailed rate schedule that meets that, but that number is based on the median household income, the number of equivalent residential units in the commercial and industrial customer base, and all the residential customers, and a certain percentage of median household income that USDA uses as their benchmark for sewer. If they thought you could, or the city could afford more, they would have lowered your grant and increased your loan. So that's how that number is determined. It's kind of backed into, and that determines the loan amount, and everything on top of that becomes grant money.
Has anybody done any analysis as to what this will do to rates? because usually the council, is very interested in what's going to mean for rates for customers.
Yeah, the overall revenue requirements and those kind of things were addressed in the preliminary engineering report. And the to-do is always to come back to it middle of the design and figure out what that actual sewer rate schedule is going to look like. And at that point, too, we normally provide several different options for the council to consider.
At least with those preliminary numbers, could you go ahead and email them to Brandon and so he could get them out to the council? Because I think they need to kind of have a feel for, if and how this may affect sewer rates.
Oh, it's definitely gonna affect sewer rates.
Yeah.
Chris, are these the same numbers we discussed last winter, February, March, whenever? Has there been any changes to that?
No, sir.
Okay.
Yes, what we didn't know back then is how much grant the city would qualify for. So anything that you're going to see now will come down. Remember, we projected it based on no grant. Instead, you ended up getting about a 38 or 39% grant. So it'll be less.
David, council has had some discussions over that in the past. Won't hurt a bit to remind council of it, but that it has been discussed.
Okay, and part of this is I'm coming in kind of midstream and playing catch up, and but usually that's important to councils is what's it going to do to rates.
Okay. Item 21 talks about permits. The owner will be required to obtain all applicable permits for the project prior to advertising for bids. And we're also going to need a vulnerability assessment or emergency plan. Our agency requires all financed water and wastewater systems to have a vulnerability assessment in place. Borrowers with existing systems must provide a certification that a vulnerability assessment has been completed prior to advertising for bids. So we would need that. And the bid authorization, we would need that. Once all conditions in Section 3 of this letter have been met, we will authorize you to advertise the project for bid. So that covers that section. And Section 4 covers the requirements prior to start of construction. And I'm not going to go over all that. It's a 37-page document. And we're only on page 13. So what I want to do is just highlight the most important parts. Cost overrun. If the bids are higher than expected, then it's possible that you may need to get another loan from us, and that has happened in the past. So just keep that in mind. It's best to provide the information that we went over as quickly as you can, because if it goes over a year, what we have been seeing is that the development costs are higher than anticipated, and we have to give another loan to the community, and that's not always a good thing. It's never a good thing, actually. Anything else I wanted to cover here? Insurance and bonding requirements under item 28, that is also very important. Prior to start of construction, we need to make sure that we have that. Okay. General liability insurance, workers' compensation, and fidelity insurance as well for persons that have access to the funds. So we would need to have that. Okay. And I would need to do a compliance review. Okay, prior to the loan closing, all the interim financing will be used, and then we'll close out the loan as Chris explained. And when that happens, then you'll start using your grant fund. Okay. Any other questions?
And Tamika, for the record, there does not appear to be any questions from the elected, and no hands are raised virtually.
Okay.
One more question, Tamika. I have
Sure.
cities have done sort of an ordinance resolution that says, like, 2 years ago when Chris first started work, you know, probably the city paid Chris out of the water and sewer budget. And I've done what's called a reimbursement ordinance to, in effect, reimburse the water and sewer enterprise fund for that seed money, you know, where they've already paid Chris or done other work, that it gets repaid out of the loan and our grant amounts when those come through. And I wanted to see if rule development would still allow us to do that.
Yes, it looks as if you guys have, let me go back here, quite a bit in contingencies. So what we normally do at the end of the project, if there's money left over, then we have no problem reimbursing you all for that. Yet you have over $600,000 in contingency. So if we don't have any surprises, then sure, I don't see that being a problem.
And Tamika, more directly, on page 3 of the letter of conditions, where it breaks down the budget and it goes through those engineering fees, David, I've already mapped those out. So that permits and O&M manual, that was actually a lot longer line description in the original budget, and we've got money in there to reimburse. That includes the things that the city's already paid for. So,
and that's great. I just wanted to be sure, you know, we wouldn't run into one of the bazillion federal regulations that says you can't do it for whatever reason. And, you know, obviously if we can reimburse the water and sewer fund, that helps that enterprise fund. Was sort of my thinking.
yeah, the things we do within that budget are always loan and grant eligible by design.
Okay. Great questions. Just making sure I don't have anything else I want to highlight here. Want to definitely make sure that you are aware when we have the pre-construction conference, we're gonna meet with everybody, and we'll have to have a meeting. Under normal circumstances, we would actually go out and meet face to face and sign all the estimates from the contractor, all invoices, and also go over any issues, and we'll do that monthly. And I still want to do that, even if we have to do it over the phone. I'm not sure how long we're going to be under this quarantine, but I would like to still, make that clear that we want to meet with you guys. Before we sign off on any pay estimates, we want to make sure that we have a monthly meeting. so that we can be aware of what's going on the project. I don't want invoices emailed to me because I tend to lose count of those. It's best to just, do it face to face if we can, or have a meeting over the phone. Okay. Change orders, item 36. We are required to review all change orders and sign off on those. And we would also require audits annually. Anything over $750,000, we would have to have an audit every year. Okay. And that's pretty much it. It's a pretty lengthy document. I gave you guys a copy. If you have any questions, and I'm sure you will throughout this process, please don't hesitate to ask me. And if I don't know, I will ask Jack, and we'll make sure that we get an answer to you all. Any additional questions for me or Chris? Okay. If not, what we'll do next is go over the loan resolution. And that is on that attachment that I sent to you, Brandon. You guys have to adopt the loan resolution. Does everybody see a copy of that?
Tamika, was that in the packet from Friday or?
Yes, that was in the packet. Yes, the council should vote on the loan resolution and whether they want to proceed with a loan of $4,748,000. It should be under RUS Bulletin 1780-27.
And I have pulled up the loan resolution, and procedurally, Tamika, and for the mayor and council and for the public, we had two items on this special called agenda, one being the presentation or the reading of the letters of conditions. And then I think procedurally, Tamika, based on what USDA needs is if in fact the elected body wants to consider the loan resolution, which would bring finality to this particular meeting, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And so council and for the public, this is the loan resolution. As you can see, hopefully on your respective device. If you should have any sort of questions, you can certainly ask the parties here now. And Mr. Mayor, I will defer it over to you and the elected.
Thank you, Brandon. And I've been following along with Tamika on these documents on my screen by pulling up what you had sent us. So that resolution is something that we had already had disclosed to us, council. So at this particular point in time, I need a motion to adopt this resolution as presented.
Make a motion, we adopt the loan resolution as presented.
And that loan resolution is in the amount of $4,748,000. So I have a motion to adopt and a second.
I second that.
Thank you, Sonny. I have a second. Any further discussion on this? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say. Any opposed, say. And the motion has carried. Thank you very much. Tamika, we appreciate your help with this, and we appreciate everyone on there who has helped us go through this process. We will have lots of questions later on, I'm sure. Anyone else have any further discussion on this?
Mayor, you may want to confirm the numbers on the vote because you gotta fill that in on the resolution, the number of yays, the number of nays, and people absent.
Yes, that is correct, and I was going to say that that part needs to be filled in, and if you could get that back to us today, that would be awesome. Mayor, there's a place for you to sign, and Brandon, there's a place for you to sign as well, and a place for the seal.
Okay, so now I want to make certain that I understood our attorney correctly on this. Now, what number are you referring to?
On the second page of the resolution, it wants you to put the vote, that the vote was 4 in favor, 0 nays, and 1 absent. You gotta write in how many voted yes, how many voted no, and how many are absent.
Okay, so we have 4 and 1, 4, 0, and 1.
Yes.
I think all of us are here.
Yeah, we have all elected.
Oh, well then it'd be 5 yays, 0 nays, and 0 absent.
Okay, awesome. Okay, and there was one other thing, under the 1942-6 form that was in that email, the letter of intent to meet conditions. When do you guys want to meet the conditions? Normally, we'll give you guys 1 year, so we can put in April 28th, 2021. So you can submit the items, prior to then. But if you want to, you can just put 1 year from today on that line. You all see what I'm talking about? It's Form 1942-46.
Yes, it's on the screen now. Tamika, we can see this. And
Okay.
at present, the date that's in there is April the 23rd, but we would change that to a year from today's date. Would make that April the 28th, 2021.
Yes. That was the date that the letter of conditions was dated on the 23rd. So if you want to, put April 23rd, 2021, that's fine. Or you can put, a year from today, whatever you want. You can always submit those documents before the end. And we would just need for the mayor to sign that. And I would need that today so that we can get this obligated for you guys. We want to make sure we get the loan obligated and the grant funds obligated for you. So if you could make sure to get this one back to me today, that would be awesome.
And I'm assuming that we have all of your contact information, Brandon, to do that.
That's correct.
And anything further from anyone on our council or otherwise?
No.
Okay.
Take a deep
I don't
breath.
mean to cut you guys off. There's still another form. I'm sorry. There's still another form that needs to be filled out, and that is the request for obligation. It's a 1940-1 form, and on that second page, we need to make sure that we have you guys sign that. There's a place there for you, Mayor, to sign and date. Okay.
I'm looking at that. That's not a problem. We'll take care of that.
That be done today too, Tamika, and gotten to you today?
Yes, these two forms need to be done today. The request for obligation and the letter of intent. Need those back today so that I can send them to our state office to get funds obligated for y'all. There was some additional forms, Brandon, that I sent to you. Those are similar to what you guys filled out when you completed the application, but we just needed more current forms. So if you can get that to me sometime this week. Those are not urgent. And if you have any questions about them, let me know. They are the equal opportunity form. It was the assurances. It was some stuff that you guys had already filled out. If you want me to go over them, I can.
I have them, and
Okay.
we have printed those out, and we will get these executed and back to you this week.
Okay, that sounds awesome. Okay. Well, that's all I have. Thank y'all so much for your patience with us throughout this process.
Well, thank you for bringing this to us. Any further questions or comments?
I'd say the patience was worth it to get to 1 3/8%.
I agree. That's a great rate.
We do like that rate. If nothing further, then we will declare this meeting closed, and Brandon, you may close us out.
All righty. Thank you all.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. Have a great day.